There is some disturbing news and new updates out of Japan with Fukushima, the crippled Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. The Japanese government today came out and said that they are going to spend $470 million on taking new measures to address the ongoing crisis at the plant. The Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe came up with his press conference today, said, "We've drawn up a basic plan to achieve a fundamental solution to the problem of radioactive water instead of reacting to each new problem as it comes up." In just the last couple of weeks, new leaks have sprung up at the nuclear power plant. They've been basically dousing all of the melted reactors with water, and that water has to go somewhere. It's radioactive. They've been storing it in about 1,000 tanks around the Fukushima nuclear power plant area, and about a third of those tanks are of a substandard type of creation that are starting to leak. There was one serious leak that they had last week, 300 tons of radioactive water into the ocean. That's why the Japanese government is taking over. Now, there's one really crazy part of this story that I think just says it all. It turns out that last month when TEPCO, the company that owns the plant, TEPCO said that they were only receiving measurements of up to 100 millisieverts per hour on their radiation gauges when they had workers walking around these tanks making sure that they were okay. Well, it turns out that TEPCO's gauges only go up to 100 millisieverts per hour. When they got some new, more sensitive gauges, it turns out that the actual radiation levels outside these tanks that are leaking are actually around 1,800 millisieverts per hour, which is enough to kill a person within 5 hours.
Yeah. I read that and I was surprised, man, 4 hours it'll kill you. But they don't really, the subtext is not mentioned there is 3 hours is probably pretty bad for you too.
Right.
It's not like, oh, dodged a bullet there.
Yeah.
Your body is like, your skin is sloughing off of your body as you, yeah, that seems like a bad idea. I don't understand why, like when we see that the meter only goes to 100, that immediately strikes us as, well, that seems like a problem, but their inspectors are like, 100, that's legit.
Yeah,
Shouldn't they have looked into that?
One would have thought.
Or maybe there was nothing that they could do about it at that point.
But haven't they systematically covered up a lot of what's gone on with the Daiichi plant?
Yeah,
because even when it was still in meltdown just a few weeks after the tsunami, there were all kinds of reports that it was far worse than anyone thought, and the government kept saying no. So they don't have a great track record when it comes to being honest.
No, they don't. And the Japanese government has been allowing TEPCO to have control of the situation. And they've been basically, guiding and saying, yes, we'll help, we'll bring in foreign experts to help with this. But it's been sort of a hands-off as far as actually going in there and making sure that TEPCO both knows how to do what they need to do to keep the reactors from, recriticality and how to keep the situation from getting worse. Not only that they know how to do it, but they're actually doing it. And this has been just the latest revelation that TEPCO has been really just doing some shoddy work. They had workers walking around these. They would take a 2-hour stroll around these tanks and sort of measure in the area. Mm-hmm. And that was they don't have water gauges in the tank, so they didn't know, well, gosh, how long have they been leaking? We don't know because we haven't been measuring.
Can I ask you a question? I don't know if you can answer it. So they have these tanks of water that have already been used to cool down the nuclear rods.
That's where they're storing.
So then they store that used water.
Right.
Can they just reuse that water? Can they cool that water, then pour it over it again?
My understanding is that they can't. And so one of the measures that they're taking now that the Japanese government is, this is, $500 million or nearly $500 million that they're talking about putting up here, that they are going to build a new water treatment plant that's supposed to filter out the radioactivity so that then it's okay.
A filter.
Right, they have to build new filters and basically have a better filtration system than they have because it just can't keep up with the volume. I mean, they're having to build new tanks in order to take all of this wastewater.
If we need to get rid of the wastewater, we could kill two birds with one stone and frack with it. I think that would be a great idea.
There you go. And there's also one other additional thing that's, I think, very interesting about this. Why did the Japanese government step up now? After 2.5 years, why are they stepping up now and saying, okay, that's it, guys, you've had your fun, you can't do the job, we're going to step in? Turns out that on Saturday, the International Olympic Committee is going to be making its announcement on which city gets to host the 2020 Summer Olympics.
Sure.
And Tokyo really, really wants to get that. So it looks as if the Japanese government is making this major step forward and committing quite a lot of money on a Monday, 6 days before they find out whether or not they got the Olympic bid.
Do you think part of this is the international community's fault, too, for not putting enough pressure on them to do the right thing in the first place? Because they were probably covering up because they have a massive catastrophe on their shores. So they didn't want their people to be freaking out, which is certainly understandable at some level. But because of our news cycle here, it's like the BP oil spill happened. Everyone was saying, well, we're going to hear the repercussions of this for 50 years. Now we don't talk about it at all. So that maybe there isn't enough pressure applied to them.
I don't think that you could say maybe media pressure, not enough media pressure applied, because I know that the international nuclear community has been very forceful in trying to get in there, and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission here in the United States also saying, hey, we're here to help, guys. We kind of know about this stuff. Why don't you let us help you figure this out?
Well, and also the weird thing or ironic thing is that nuclear plant in Japan, where we look towards the great engineers, and that plant is built by General Electric. Really? Really? This is the thing that you guys buy American on? Nuclear power plants? You don't call Sony, ask them what they think first?
Yeah.
You go right to GE. Okay.
One thing that I thought was especially scary about this is in another article they're talking about the decommissioning process for the old reactors, and they say that it's going to take decades. It always shocks me when something like that is going to take decades, but also that it requires as yet non-existent technologies. So that's a lot of faith in scientific progress, I guess.
I was going to say that's different from regular decommissioning of a plant that has not melted down. Right. That also still takes decades and billions of dollars, and that is something that's required from the nuclear industry to set aside a little bit of money in order to decommission a plant. But this is different. Those melted reactors, no one knows how to remove fuel that's been melted down into the concrete and possibly into the ground.
Yeah,
Nobody knows how to do that.
Scary.
So that water that's getting out into the ocean, so they try to make me feel better about it by saying, well, by the time it gets to the shores of the United States, which it eventually will, it'll be so diluted by that time that it won't be really that radioactive. Although they can still measure it, it won't be harmful. So it'll only just sicken all the fish from there to here. So that's a bullet dodge, right?
Well, now there are some fish that are banned for sale if they're caught in that region. And,
Really?
you know, there are lots of computer models that say, oh, the radiation plume from the actual event itself in March 2011, the radiation plume is going to reach the United States coast like 2014. But that is exactly what the nuclear experts are saying, that by the time it gets, even, you know, however many miles out from the Japanese coast, that it is so diluted that it is not a danger.